East County Assemblymember Carl DeMaio is launching a new campaign to require voter identification and proof of citizenship when Californians head to the polls.
But critics say it would make it more difficult to vote and are blasting the idea of widespread voter fraud. CBS 8's Richard Allen is here with DeMaio's response to that and what it will take to get this measure on the ballot. Richard?
And Carlo and Marcella, this newly revived campaign to require voter ID at the polls comes after a previously unsuccessful attempt at a ballot measure back in 2023, as well as similar legislation earlier this year that failed to make it out of committee. But Republican Assemblymember Carl DeMaio, who is spearheading this campaign, says that support for this move is growing, and he believes that the voters themselves should decide this issue.
We need to fix the system.
San Diego Assemblymember Carl DeMaio says this move to require voter identification is a nonpartisan issue, one that he says would restore trust in the electoral system.
Well, California voters have lost a lot of trust and confidence in our elections here, and we need to restore that.
This initiative would require the state to verify proof of citizenship when someone registers to vote, and voters would also be required to provide identification at the polls.
There is no verification when you show up to vote as to your identity. There's also no real verification when you vote by mail.
To that end, under this proposed ballot measure, voters who cast their ballot by mail would be required to provide the last 4 digits of their Social Security number or some other form of government-issued ID.
There is overwhelming evidence that the way in which we do balloting in California opens the door to all sorts of fraudulent voting, and we don't know how bad the situation is.
The idea that voter fraud is a widespread problem has been debunked time and again.
But critics of this move, including the League of Women Voters who testified at an Assembly committee hearing earlier this year, says that requiring voter ID and proof of citizenship would make it more difficult for people to vote.
Americans have fought long and hard to overcome our sordid history of voter suppression. We cannot go backwards.
Dora Rose is deputy director of the League of Women Voters of California. She says millions of eligible voters don't have the kind of voter ID and documentary proof of citizenship that this move would require.
It hits hardest among communities of color, people with disabilities, the elderly, and women. Getting the necessary documentation is extremely costly.
We do not do anything in this initiative to make it harder to vote. In fact, we make it easier to vote and verify your identity using government-issued ID.
Now, more than 874,000 verified signatures would need to be collected to make it on the ballot, but DeMaio says his campaign is aiming to gather more than 1 million signatures.
So, Richard, where does this initiative go from here, and when could voters possibly see this on the ballot?
Well, between now and October 1st. October 1st is when they can start gathering those signatures, but between now and then, they're just building support. He's calling it a grassroots effort. They're holding a bunch of rallies around the state over the next 6-7 weeks, and then we could possibly see it if they get, I think it's like just under 875,000 verified signatures, which is no small task. If they get those signatures, we could see it on the ballot next year, November 2026.
Yeah, and with no evidence of any kind of widespread voter fraud that would have impacted any elections, it seems like a solution for a problem that we don't have in California. But
That's
we'll
what some are
see what happens,
saying.
Richard. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.